more business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.
Very good morning to another exciting edition of Webinar Wednesday. And it's that time again, and I welcome all our attendees from all over the country. Importantly, before we start, please let us know where you're from, what your expectations are. We're going to talk around funding, a massive subject for SMEs and for anybody out there, but specifically for SMEs. And so please tell us where you are, what your expectations are, how you're doing, example, and importantly, how this works this morning. If I'm not sure, you can also tell us if this is your first time on Webinar Wednesday, if it's your second or third time. Always nice to hear, and we do know we get a big attraction from repeat viewers and listeners on an ongoing basis. And what's always great about Webinar Wednesday is that this lives on for years. Importantly, a couple of things. Technology, as we know, rules in many occasions. So if something doesn't work out, importantly, don't leave the platform. We will be back. And fortunately to date, we've had very few obstacles, but we do know that technology can present itself at any given time. So here again, tell us where you're from, what your expectations are. We're going to talk around funding. And the topic today is an exciting topic. And of course, we're going to talk about why SMEs struggle to succeed in procurement-based business and how to manage the risks. And importantly, AAA Consortium is not only the host this morning, Leonard Bierkman, the COO of AAA Consortium, they're also a valued partner of NSBC. And so we're going to talk around that, and we're going to touch on purchase order funding and all the things that go with it. So without me spoiling the show, Leonard, please join me on stage. Leonard, we've had a long chat this morning talking about technology and funding and all those good things that happen. And Leonard, you're an exciting time here, an exciting topic, and we know that the number one challenge around, not only in South Africa, globally, is of course access to finance or access to funding, if you like. And this is the space that you play in. So what we normally do here is that I'll ask you, Leonard, tell us a little about AAA Consortium and a bit about yourself, if you wouldn't mind.
Most definitely. Firstly, Mike, thank you very much for having us and for the opportunity. My name is Leonard Bierkman. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of AAA Consortium, and we're a company that is specialized in purchase order funding and invoice discounting, predominantly in the government, and excitingly entered into the private sector recently as well. So we fund purchase orders based off client skills and expertise. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, so anybody out there who's got these great purchase orders in place and need some cash fast, Leonard's your man. AAA Consortium is the company. So, and of course, if anybody wants to get hold of Leonard after this discussion, please let us know. Put your comments in the chat, and we will ask our team in the back end here to put our contact details on as well. And so I'll give a short synopsis on the chat this morning. Attendees will gain practical insights into the factors that impact procurement success, including cash flow pressure, capacity readiness, and risk awareness, while learning general approaches to improve business preparedness and sustainability when pursuing procurement opportunities. Lots of words there, but critically important. So Leonard, let's get into the discussion. I've got a couple of questions that have been put forward to me. So, and when you've finished answering, Leonard, I don't want to interrupt you. I sometimes tend to talk faster and quicker, and I sometimes tend to talk a lot. So I'm not going to do that this morning. But Leonard, why do so many SMEs struggle to successfully deliver on procurement opportunities even after securing a purchase order?
So that's a very good question, Mike. A lot of SMEs, when they're securing a purchase order, they do not take in consideration the operational requirement to be able to do so. And that is a very, very important factor. But also the financial requirements to be able to do so, especially when getting a purchase order. Obviously, as an SMME, the first thing they look at is to be able to gain the work And obviously to do so, they start the tendering process, they go see the end users, and they get the purchase order. But obviously, only once the purchase order is received, they believe now is the best opportunity to execute on it, without taking into consideration, what is the financial requirements that is needed? Am I operationally ready to be able to execute on these purchase orders as well? And that is a standard problem that we face with SMMEs in South Africa currently. And obviously, that is where we want to bridge that gap. We always need to take into consideration, are we operationally ready? Do we have the financial requirements? And obviously, we have to take into consideration the end user. Have we done our proper research on the end user? Did we verify their payment terms? When are we getting those payments? And obviously, all these are conglomerately taken into consideration of how do we get to that execution point. Obviously, once that order is received, we always need to take into consideration, yes, we've got to the point of reaching the order, but what is the expertise required to get to that execution stage? Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, Leonard, thank you for that. And then a key question here, Leonard. How does underpricing or incorrect costing contribute to procurement failure?
Oh, yes, most definitely. When it comes to the pricing, again, we just touched base on that previously, not taking that into consideration. And what we've seen, when clients underquote, they're not taking into consideration the full turnkey of getting the goods delivered. So, for example, when we're looking at orders that need to be delivered, we need to take in consideration that there's a logistical part of that. And if that is not factored in beforehand, obviously you're going to fail to deliver, and which does ultimately lead to reputational damage to your end user. And that is something that you want to delay at all costs. You need to ensure that when you're quoting, you take in consideration, what is my operational cost to get the delivery? Do I have a good relationship with my suppliers? And what is my payment terms with those suppliers? Because I'm going to have to pay them, and within certain lead times, we're going to have to receive that payment back. Yes, Mike.
Yeah, we often hear about due diligence across the board, but how important is due diligence before accepting a purchase order?
Due diligence is essential. A purchase order should never be accepted simply because it's a large value. Businesses always need to verify the credibility of the buyer, budget approvals. What is the payment terms of the end user? Are we looking at a 30-day, a 60-day, 90-day? And what is the delivery requirements? That should always be taken into consideration beforehand. And then obviously, most importantly in the procurement space, supply availability. What is it going to take and what is the lead times to get the product manufactured and actually delivered to the end user? And then obviously the cash flow requirements always needs to be taken into consideration. And obviously that's a big part that we come in is where do we get that capital to be able to get to the stage of execution? Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, cash flow, as we know, is a massive problem out there. There's a number of reasons what causes cash flow, Leonard, and more than most people. We do know when a lot of SMEs work a lot with these big companies. I mean, getting paid, prompt payment is such a nightmare. And of course, if you've got a purchase order, it's a great way to get that cash alleviation quickly, as opposed to hanging on. SMEs have got to pay their overheads, they've got to pay their salaries, etc. But we're constantly on the drive to get big business and government to pay SMEs fast and on time, because what we do know, Leonard, and you all know too, is that when, of course, an SME goes out of business, the family goes out of business, and we can't allow that. So you play a major role in that gap and funding across the board. Now, Leonard, how can over-reliance on projected payment timelines create risk?
This is a very, very big one. And as you've mentioned, Mike, obviously, in our space and for SMMEs, it is crucial for us to get payments, and the over-reliance thereof. We always need to do our research, especially when we are working with end users. In the private sector, when you're working with credible end users, it does make it a lot more easier. But when we are moving and predominantly focused on the government sector, there's a lot of public knowledge out there, and that is where you as the SME need to do the research. You need to understand, if you are working with a municipality, what is the financial standing of that municipality? And whether it might be 30, 60 or 90 days, you need to plan accordingly. Even with multiple different end users, it's crucial. We've touched base quite a few times on the cash flow requirements for us to be able to get the business up and running and to sustain the business at the end of the day. So always have a buffer. Look at your cash flow, ensure that you are ready to execute on the delivery and that you have the financial capabilities to do so. Most definitely is important.
Yeah, that's hugely important. And here's an important one, Leonard. What operational bottlenecks typically emerged after a purchase order is secured?
So majority of the time, once the purchase order has been secured, the common challenges include stock shortages, obviously depending on what is the availability, what the industry you are in, supply delays. Obviously, again, it is absolutely crucial to have that supply relationship to ensure that you have predetermined what is available and what needs to be manufactured. Again, what we did, as we discussed previously, transport issues. What is the product that I'm delivering? What is the cost involved in getting that product delivered? And then quality inspections. When we are getting to delivering to our end user, specifications and the quality of the product, it is extremely important. If you give a good service and you deliver a product on time and within spec, it's a definite that either the department or the end user or the private entity will most definitely make use of you again. And then documentation errors. We touched base on, how important is payment deadlines. And obviously what people or SMMEs do not take into consideration is what is the documentation errors to get to that payment milestones. And if that is not in order, if we are delivering product, let's ensure that the invoice is ready to be submitted. Let's ensure we've got the delivery notes on hand to be signed off by the department officials or the end users. And then ultimately, one of the largest problems is the cash flow shortage. We planned a large transaction and it's been delayed with 30 days. And now I'm in a position where I do not have the cash flow. We always need to be taking in consideration what is my funding partners, who they are, and how we're going to bridge that gap once that has been successfully, the purchase order has been successfully given over to you. And then obviously in terms of an operational point of view, the coordination between, your internal employees, the end user, your supplier, the logistical parts of that is always a point of concern. Businesses that have documented operational processes usually manage challenges a lot better. So always ensure that your operating procedures within your business is always on par and that you are ready to be able to get to execution stage. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, great feedback there, Leonard. Now, why do some SMEs overcommit beyond the operational capacity?
Now, that is a very, very good one. And look, Mike, many entrepreneurs believe the bigger the contracts automatically mean bigger success. And that is not necessarily always the case. Instead, sometimes they accept contracts that do not have the people, the systems, or even the funding to deliver. They believe that, the larger transaction is automatically going to be more profitable. And that's not always the case. They need to take into consideration, what do I need to be able to get the deliverable done? It is better to deliver one contract exceptionally well than fail on several large contracts, is something that I always tell our clients.
No, absolutely. So, Leonard, now, internal controls. How can SMEs build internal controls to reduce delivery risk?
So, obviously, checklist is very, very important. If they can ensure that they've got checklists, if they perhaps have specification sheets, once they've received that order, ensure that that is in order. And before delivering, ensure that the logistical matters have been resolved as well. Compliance is a very, very critical part of this. Obviously, ensure that you are already tax compliant. Ensure that your SOPs that is written when you are getting to execution stage are in order. The SOPs within your business, always ensure that your foundation is built very, very strongly. And from there, you'll be able to build forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, practical systems. Leonard, what practical systems should be in place before pursuing larger contracts?
So again, we are touching base on that operational infrastructure that you should have. Before going to larger contracts, ensure that you have the expertise in the current industry that you are doing. and that you have successfully delivered on that specific contract. We've seen a lot of times that different SMMEs are taking multiple contracts outside of their expertise to be able to create that growth. But what they're not taking in consideration is, what is my operational requirement for that? What is the financial requirement for that? So always ensure that you are operationally ready. You've got the expertise to be able to take on larger contracts. And obviously, do you have the financial support to be able to bridge the gap between receiving and execution?
Absolutely, Leonard. Now, how can SMEs balance aggressive growth with financial stability?
So what I would highly suggest is reaching out to a funding partner. Again, if you have maintained a sustainable business to start off with, before deciding to go over to the next phase, look at a funding partner that's not just going to give you the financial requirements, but the operational and resource assistance, so that you can focus on the core competencies of your business and then leveraging on the funding partner to be able to grow and sustain the business moving forward, especially when wanting to build and reaching a specific area of growth.
Now, Leonard, you're talking about funding partners, and we know there are many funding partners, not only in the country, but around Africa and globally. Now, this is an important question, Leonard. What should SMEs look for in a funding partner to ensure alignment with minimal risk?
So when approaching a funder, obviously, first and foremost is to ensure that, you know, it is more than just a financial arm, but what more are they going to be bringing towards the table to ensure that we can successfully partner up on a transaction or a contract? And do they necessarily have the expertise? As you have mentioned, Mike, there is a lot of funding partners within the industry, and each and every one of them trade in different areas of expertise. And that is what you need to focus on is, do you align with that funding partner? And what is it that they will be bringing to the table as well? I do always say, and this is one of the things that set us apart, is it is that operational input that is given as well. It's not just giving the financial arm, but ensuring that we've got the communication with the end users, ensuring that the products that you have is within spec, and then obviously assisting you even when times are difficult. If you have perhaps underquoted on a specific line item, that they have the expertise to be able to get suppliers that can perhaps give better pricing and enable you to be able to get it over the line. It is extremely important to ensure that when you are working with a funding partner, do your research, look at the agreements, and understand what are we partnering together with, and how will we ultimately resolve the challenges that we are facing. Over to you, Mike.
Leonard, good point there. And we know that the life and times of a business owner or entrepreneur who owns and runs an SME is filled with mistakes. And that's just the way life is. But what mistakes do SMEs make when approaching funders, and how can they prepare better?
So the biggest mistakes that SMMEs make when approaching a funding partner is not being transparent, open, and honest. Obviously, depending on your funding partner and your financial requirement to be able to execute on that, it is important to always be transparent with the funder, regardless of how large or small the problems might be, whether that might be a compliance issue, a tax compliance issue. They can always give you the guidance that is required to be able to assist you and get it over the line. So in essence, I would say, when approaching a funding partner, be transparent. Explain to them the problems that you're facing. We've dealt with many clients that come to us, and you know what? They've received it, but they've unfortunately underquoted on a certain item. We don't just show that client the way. We tell them, perfect, give me the specifications, and we will go internally and look at the resources that we have, our supplier network, and get a better pricing. As we understand, underpricing is an unfortunate a problem that we do have. But again, we've got a vast network that we work with, and obviously we need to always ensure we leverage on top of that for the SMME. Thanks, Mike.
Good point, Leonard. Now, what does a well-managed, funded procurement deal look like compared to one that fails, Leonard?
So I would say a good funded transaction would look like having all your information. Once you've received the purchase order, again, you have built that relationship, you've got the supplier quotes. Once that is received, the purchase order, the supplier quotes, and your RFQ is then handed over to your funding partner. And obviously that would be going into review. And because you have shared the information and you have been transparent from the start, it enables the funding partner to be able to do the due diligence and obviously assist you a lot quicker. Once the due diligence is done and we can see and note that you have a credible supplier, we've got good lines of communication with the end user. Obviously, then from there, we can fund the transaction and obviously assist you to get it over the line. There's no delays with suppliers. The supplier is informed that you've got a funding partner and the deliverable is ready to be done. The only problem that we will be facing is obviously the delivery time that is on there. But again, with the assistance from the funding partner, getting that over the line, ensuring delivery. Then we're getting to the third, and I feel the most crucial part is the invoicing and obviously the delivery of the product and what is required to get the proper sign-off throughout the process. And again, that is something that we do assist with. We ensure that we get the entire procurement team to sign off, the financial team, so that it can get to a point where payment will be actioned within 30, 60 or 90 days. Whereas a failed transaction, I would definitely say, is not being well acquainted with suppliers, not having the right documentation in place, and obviously not being transparent. Funders do due diligence, and they will look at what you are saying and what is factually there. And we reach out to the suppliers to ensure, that all is in order. And obviously a failed transaction, unfortunately, it goes a lot of back and forth to be able to get the truth. And that is, as the previous question, Mike, it is absolutely crucial to ensure that you are transparent to mitigate these delays, regardless of what the challenges might be that you're facing. There's not a hurdle that we cannot overcome together. But if we are not aware of that hurdles, it's going to fail from the onset. And again, going to the previous question, transparency from the onset is extremely important. But if you've got your documentation in order, you have very, very good relationship with multiple reputable suppliers. The full history of that transaction, it does not take very long at all. Thanks, Mike.
Now, Leonard, super insightful so far, but I've got a final long-lasting question for you. What is the single most important piece of advice you would give an SME preparing to pursue larger procurement opportunities over the next 12 months?
So Mike, definitely is to be able to ensure that you are operationally ready and that get the right funding partner to assist you getting to that larger transactions. Ensure that your business is sustainable on the smaller transactions and that you're reputable in the industry. You've got the expertise, you've got the insight as well. And then from that point, once you've got the funding partner without having any capital constraints on your side, start building up those resources and ensure that you're ready to be able to take it from there.
Leonard Beekman, COO of AAA Consortium. We thank you personally for your contribution. Super insightful. If you look at the chats coming through, awesome comments coming through. So thank you to all our attendees out there. And please, if you need to get in touch, the details are on the chat box there. If you can't get that, just contact our office and we will assist you to connect up with Leonard and AAA Consortium. A great partner of NSBC, truly grateful for that, importantly. But just something on closing before I say goodbye to Leonard and to you all attendees out there. And thank you for attending. Without people like you, we can't do what we do. So I appreciate your attendance. And of course, without companies like AAA Consortium, we can't do what we do. Help SMEs stay in business, build bigger and more successful businesses. But importantly, if you haven't as yet, the Business Show Africa, it's now not long to go. Spring is looming, the first week of September, the Business Show Africa. It's on track to be an absolute epic world record beater. So if you haven't registered, it's complimentary. Go on there, register. Maybe the team can put the website there. I know many of you have possibly registered already, but it's the Biz Show with a Z, the bizshow.africa. Great speakers, great networking, great insights. And also what's quite interesting, Leonard, for the first time this year, at the Business Show Africa, we'll be hosting Access to Finance Live. So all about funding, no doubt Leonard and his team will be there. So we look forward to that. So please register. But there's a lot happening before then. We've got Breakfast Connect coming up next Friday in Cape Town. If you want details on that, international speaker, great networking, great announcements. So please, if you want to hear more about Breakfast Connect in Cape Town for next Friday, pop it onto the chat or just go onto our website, nspc.africa, and go to the events and then get your ticket. It's going to be an absolutely epic experience. Leonard, back to you. Thank you very much. And I'm pretty grateful for your time. Very insightful, very interesting for me personally. And no doubt this is not the first one. We'll do many more. All the very best to you and to our attendees out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mike. Enjoy.
Small business is the mainstay of our economy. It's the biggest driver of job creation. The Business Show Africa is about that. New ideas, new opportunities, bigger trends. What people can get here over 2 days, they can never get in 10 years. And if you just take a look around here and you witness the passion, the excitement, the resilience, and that's really what makes it all worthwhile.
For more business boosting content, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and like our posts.